Have you ever thought about how glorious it would be to become the best in a field? To be crowned the king of a certain feat, with people all over the world admiring your capabilities? Of course you have. No matter what you pursue, there's always a chance and an innate desire to be the best. All around the world, we see people perfecting their craft in order to get better and better and to one day reach a level of greatness most humans can't even dream of. However, why is it that not everyone can be great? Why can't you, me, or anyone else in this world become a god in the eyes of the public? This question is explored in extreme depth in the 2014 movie Whiplash, starring Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons, while also being directed by Damien Chazelle, who directed La La Land, another critically acclaimed movie. Before we get into this video, we'd like to thank everyone that has subscribed, liked, and or commented on the past videos. It was a pleasure to see the positive support. Thank you and enjoy. At first glance, Whiplash seems like a fairy tale depiction of pursuing one's dream. The reason why Whiplash stands out amongst the pack is the choice for it to subvert our expectations and tell a more complex story about not just what it takes to become a good musician, but all the sacrifices that come with pursuing greatness. In essence, Whiplash thoroughly follows a nuanced and thematic examination of perfectionism through obsession. Frequently in modern storytelling, passion is often equated to obsession, which leads to the misconstruing of what sacrifices perfectionists actually make to pursue their craft. Through Chazelle's direction and Teller's excellent performance, the story uses an abusive relationship between instructor Terence Fletcher and student Andrew Neiman to ponder the question if perfection is worth pursuing by analyzing the impacts this pursuit has on relationships, especially Neiman's relationship to his instructor, his family, his loved ones, and most importantly, himself.
Whiplash follows the story of Andrew Neiman, who's played by Miles Teller. Neiman is a young jazz drummer striving to be the best. He joins an elite jazz band in Shaver Conservatory led by Terence Fletcher, an intimidating instructor who's played by J.K. Simmons. Throughout the movie, Fletcher tests Neiman's dedication and passion to jazz, pushing him to his physical and mental limits. As Neiman's skills improve, their relationship becomes increasingly strained, with the movie centering around themes of relationships and obsession. Starting with Neiman, it might be simple to fall into the trap of believing that the character is a one-dimensional static character representative of the stereotypical perfectionist archetype, perhaps a gifted young musician who pushes himself to the limit in the pursuit of perfection. Yet, the beauty of his character is his progression. Neiman starts the story as a normal, charismatic young man capable of balancing his passion and life. But as the story progresses and he is pushed into these uniquely crafted environments like the Shaver Conservatory Jazz Band, we can see how a toxic environment, which is perpetuated by a large gap in power dynamics between student and instructor, Neiman's identity is stripped. We watch and observe Neiman's passion for drumming change into an unhealthy obsession, which consumes him, causing not only physical damage onto his body, but a mental shift reminiscent of those in abusive relationships. In doing so, the ever-growing pressure of his ambition hollows him out and changes him into an individual traumatized by his drive for excellence, stripping him of the properties which make him human, and in doing so, he finds himself struggling with the psychological and emotional effects of his single-minded pursuit. Although his environment plays a large role, it is quite evident that the character is written in a manner to reflect that his environment only serves as a catalyst to this obsessive nature which is intrinsically built into many for certain fields. Yet, Chazelle is begging us, the audience, to ask ourselves a question. Are interests meant to be developed via passion or obsession? Which one leads us to further enjoy the field? What separates these two ideas? To further understand these questions, the dichotomy between Andrew and his instructor, Terence Fletcher, is further explored.
The movie's antagonist is Terence Fletcher, the director of the Shaver Conservatory's jazz band. Fletcher starts off as a seemingly kind and encouraging character, lulling Andrew into a false sense of trust by encouraging his practice and giving him chances to play in the jazz band. The movie cleverly transitions into a complete shift of this character, showing his abusive and hostile nature, shocking even the audience. This process of revealing and building up a character is extremely powerful, as it makes the audience feel scared and helpless, as they too feel betrayed by a character they once trusted. However, even with Fletcher's abusive nature, he does truly make his students better. This begs the question, is this type of mentorship the most effective? Does pressure and fear lead to better results? This movie explores this idea and comes to the conclusion that it depends what you consider better results.
As this movie's setting is heavily musical, it is important to discuss the nature of the music in this movie. The music played is jazz, which is definitely deliberate. Jazz in itself is a very upbeat and happy genre of music, which contrasts heavily to the film's depressing and serious themes. Jazz can also be very intense and fast, which plays really well with the film's tense situations at times. This sense of irony with jazz being such a go-lucky genre of music adds an unsettling layer to the movie, as you expect the themes to be quite uplifting at first, maybe expecting a happy-go-lucky story about a boy pursuing his dreams as a musician. However, the movie completely subverts expectations once again. This idea of lulling the watchers into a false sense of security is present also in the character of Fletcher, interestingly enough, with this idea helping immerse and get the audience interested in the movie. Furthermore, jazz and music as an industry has many stars that suffered unfortunate fates, whether that be succumbing to the pressure of the industry or getting caught up in a party lifestyle or even not living to see their success. This idea is a central theme of Whiplash, which is the consequences of becoming great. As discussed before, the movie evolves from having a very optimistic and adventurous tone, with Neiman seeming like a kid chasing his dream, to a very depressing and disturbing one, with Neiman sacrificing everything that makes him human in order to achieve his dream of greatness. The frequent changes in atmosphere in this movie are very noticeable, making it like a frightening but gripping roller coaster ride. Now, with all that being said, Chazelle crafts specific scenes within the duration of the movie to further his central assertion of how Neiman's pursuit of perfectionism leads to a destruction of his personal life due to the sacrifices he makes because of his obsession. The three major sacrifices that can be observed are Neiman's relationships, dignity, and a fulfilling life.
One of the ways that Neiman sets himself apart from other characters is that we get to observe the destruction gradually change his life in a way where we just cannot look away. To begin, one of the most evident examples of Andrew ruining one of his closest relationships is his breakup scene with his girlfriend. With cold, detached dialogue, Neiman lacks the social awareness to recognize his girlfriend's presence, and as such builds his cold obsession for music and drumming, which has taken over his life at this point, developing him into someone lacking empathy and sympathy to understand the situation he is putting his partner in. All in all, this sacrifice of what could have been considered a loving relationship is ultimately diminished to nothing and reduced to the past, as Neiman is more focused on his goals, and as such he sees the time invested in this relationship as nothing more than a waste of his time, failing to see the human emotions that are involved with feelings of compassion and love. This all in all divides us, the audience, from Neiman, as we want him to reach his goals, but we are so unfamiliar with this detachment process that when it is completed with zero regard for emotions, it creates an unreal atmosphere that is truly awkward. Furthermore, this scene is only expanded on with Andrew trying to amend things with his girlfriend later on after his career takes a turn. As Andrew tries to reconnect with his human side and rebuild his relationships, he is faced with the harsh reality that there are consequences to his actions and that his pursuits for obsession have only led him to a hollowless, lonely path. He soon realizes that all of this obsession may never have been worth it, as it made him less human, but at this point he is so low in his life with no real connections that it seems incomprehensible for him to rebuild these relationships, and as such it may be too late for him to turn back from his once desired pursuit.
Additionally, not only does Neiman sacrifice his relationship with potential loved ones, but also his relationships with his family. In the awkwardly tense dinner scene with Andrew's family and friends, we see that Neiman's obsession with his craft and the lack of approval he gets from others for pursuing said interest results in him having an unfound sense of superiority, which is based on a destructive yet insecure long-term mindset. Neiman believes his commitment to his craft will propel him to greater heights than anyone else before him, and in doing so, his inflated self-perceived self-worth is built by bringing down the accomplishments of others, which creates a tense divide, damaging both his relationship with his father and their family friends. When his ego is checked by his father and the family friends, he equates his legacy and potential greatness to those musicians that died early on and lived extremely deprived and unfulfilling lives. In doing so, the miserable aspect of Neiman shines through and shows how this desire for fame and renown backs his obsession in an unhealthy manner that isolates him from others, including his own family, in a very saddening scene. It shows Neiman accepts that fate for himself, and he clearly states that he believes it is a worthwhile exchange for the level of greatness. In doing so, through the usage of different types of relationships, Chazelle constructs Neiman's character progression as one that prioritizes success and fame over family and love, leading us to see the sad sacrifice that must be made for what he defines as success.
Yet, another form of relationship that is explored is his own self-respect in the form of dignity and abuse explored via Neiman's relationship with his instructor, Terrence Fletcher. As previously mentioned, Andrew is completely fine with succumbing to a horrible fate and life as long as he achieves greatness. He is seen to believe in the idea that greatness is worth achieving at all costs, even if he must end up dying alone. His fulfillment during his life is not what matters, but after it has already ended. He doesn't care about how people perceive him as a person, and this is shown throughout his conversation at the dinner table and breaking up with his girlfriend. All that matters to him is his vision to become a great drummer. However, another way in which he does not respect himself is by constantly putting up with the abuse of Fletcher. A good example of this is the rushing or dragging scene, where Fletcher humiliates Andrew in front of the whole band, even going as far as slapping him in the face multiple times while berating him. Coupled with how this scene progressed from a seemingly calm and helpful tone to outright abusive and harsh, the scene really demonstrates how Fletcher believes you have to push people past a point of humanity and so far out of their comfort zone in order to achieve greatness. When Andrew starts crying, Fletcher hopes that Andrew starts to become more and more used to being outside of this comfort zone and willing to push himself so far past a state of comfort that he skyrockets to a level of success that he never would have reached otherwise. For example, there is a common thought that Fletcher purposefully hid the folder containing the music notes instead of it being lost, pressuring his drummers and testing Neiman to play without the need for sheet music. Also, in the final scene, Fletcher tricks Neiman into playing a piece that he was not prepared for, presumably to get back at him for supposedly ratting out Fletcher's abuse. However, we believe that this was purposeful, as Fletcher's main tactic is to make Neiman escape his comfort zone, to force himself to be better. While Fletcher's abuse tactics and its effect on Andrew is a whole separate video, we can still see the idea of pursuing greatness at all costs in this relationship. Andrew puts up with the abuse for a good portion of the movie, as he too believes in Fletcher's vision, and likes that it makes him a better drummer.
We see this shine through when Andrew competes for his position in the band, showing that he respects Fletcher as a director and wants to play for him. Also by how he constantly and obsessively practices, going as far as making his hands bleed and sweating an ungodly amount. We also see this change in how Andrew practices, from determined but pretty tame at the beginning, to working himself to near death out of desperation and obsession. His hands bleeding is especially disturbing, as it showcases just how hard Andrew is working and how he is harming himself not only mentally, but physically. The climax of this is obviously Andrew's car crash, which is a situation where someone should be worried about their own well-being and focus on getting themselves the medical attention they need. However, we truly see how bad Andrew's obsession has gotten, as instead of doing this, he feels an actual need that he needs to go perform. He needs to perform and prove himself at all costs, just showing how destructive his behavior has become and how far he is willing to go to prove himself the best. He no longer has any respect for himself as a human, but only as a musician. He doesn't give himself an opportunity to love or to seek medical attention, but only to play. We then obviously see this buildup of emotions that Andrew has put in the backseat in order to pursue drumming at the highest level completely erupt once he makes it to the venue after his car crash. He attacks Fletcher and yells at him in front of the whole crowd, finally succumbing to his feelings and his desire to be human again. He finally realizes what he's become, or more importantly, what Fletcher made him. However, it seems as if Andrew chose this path for himself. He always wanted to be the greatest. He could have left the conservatory after learning of Fletcher's true nature, but realistically, what other choice did he have? If you were presented with the opportunity to become greater than you ever could, wouldn't you take it? Andrew saw this situation as a challenge and a chance to get better, a mindset that is pretty unique to certain ambitious individuals. However, was this worth it? Did it get him what he wanted at a proper cost? Was Andrew already aware of these costs?
This is what's so great about this film. It doesn't tell you what way is the right way, it simply shows you the journey. It is your choice to decide if the journey is worth the destination. We see everything Andrew must go through, all the abuse and suffering, and we then see the husk of a man he becomes after that's all over. Even though he seems as if he's done with that life after the car crash, the consequences of his pursuit of it still hold him. He no longer has his partner or his self-respect. We see Andrew act completely different than he did at the beginning. He went from an ambitious, confident kid to a shell of who he once was. However, we then get one of the best scenes in all of cinema, the final drum scene. Let's talk a bit more about the build-up to the scene.
This final drum scene is pretty much a build-up of everything in the movie. We get to see Andrew's talents finally showcased after everything he's gone through. This is the moment we decide if it was worth it. This is the moment we waited for the whole movie, because it had to get him something, right? His practice and abuse could not have been for nothing. The reason this scene is so good is because it's a lose-lose, while still feeling like there is a chance to win. If Andrew fails, then it was all for nothing. All his practice, all the abuse, it did not yield the skills he desired. However, if he succeeds, then he has already sacrificed everything close to him regardless, leaving a very subjective idea of if it was worth it or not. This makes the audience so invested, as we all want to see the payoff to Andrew's actions, even if it's not completely worth it. This scene does not disappoint at all. It is so intense and powerful that I couldn't even take my eyes off for 1 second while it was playing. If you've watched the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it seems that Andrew's troubles have given him the skills he has always desired. However, let's talk about Fletcher for a bit. Earlier, Fletcher is seen crying over the death of a past student of his, Sean Casey, who was thought of by Fletcher as his most potential-filled student, as Casey did everything he did to become the best. He initially tells everyone that Casey died in a car crash, which is obvious foreshadowing to Andrew's car crash. These two things obviously mirror Andrew, feeling like the movie is telling us that these two are related in some way. It is then revealed that Casey had actually committed suicide, supposedly because of not being able to handle the life given to him by Fletcher and currently being given to Andrew. This seems like a depressing way of the movie, trying to tell the audience the inevitable conclusion to all these stories: the total destruction of the person chasing greatness. No human is able to handle that level of success without facing the debilitating consequences. It seems as if Andrew too will face the same fate. Maybe it won't be suicide, but perhaps some other form of self-destruction, like depression as talked about at the dinner scene. However, this is what once again makes this movie so brilliant. It is so rewarding to see Andrew perform like that, yet so unsatisfying at the same time. We're relieved to see Andrew's skills, but also can't help but feel extremely uncomfortable with his current state and his future as a human being.
By implementing these specific scenes, Chazelle is able to visually encapsulate the effects of pursuing perfection in an obsessive manner. Importantly, by illustrating the destruction of his relationships with not only those around him, but also with himself, we only see a lonelier and miserable part of this life. It makes us question what is even the point, or what is the point of trying to achieve this in this way, as it leads to nothing but despair. Highlighted excellently with the dynamic between Fletcher and Neiman, where Neiman is constantly trying to seek Fletcher's approval in any form, from hurting himself to taking all of the verbal and physical abuse hurled at him. This creates a disconnect between us, the viewer, and Neiman, producing a depressing take on the value of all of this. No matter what happens, you are bound to lose something in the pursuit of excellence. And for many, they sacrifice important things, but can success be achieved in a healthy manner that does not require the loss of oneself? This is the question Chazelle begs, and somewhat answers within his story. By providing a perspective, Chazelle builds one answer to the question, but allows us to interpret the other possible cases, leading us to question whether we need passion or obsession to become the greatest. Overall, Whiplash does a fantastic job of going over the idea of obsession and the quest to become one of the greatest. Is this quest worth it? Is it truly what we're meant to do? We see not only the journey with the jarring sacrifices that need to be made, but the unsatisfying destination that it all leads to. As such, Whiplash should go down as one of the strongest movies at provoking a plethora of emotions, as everyone is moving through life with their own personal interests, but to what extent do we pursue them? Thank you guys for watching the video to the end. If you made it here, we really appreciate all your support and we're glad you enjoyed the video. Please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you'd like to see more, as it helps us a lot.